Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Now today we're going to be talking about search, and specifically I'm going to be talking about some of the observations I've made while building a search engine with ChatGPT. Now I got this sort of this idea from Bing Chat AI, and I wanted to build something similar. And this was before GPT-4 and ChatGPT plugins were released. ChatGPT plugins, not sure if you've heard of it, is basically similar to what I'm trying to do. It is trying to give ChatGPT the ability to interact with APIs to get the latest information from the web. Now, I don't have access to ChatGPT plugins yet, and I'm interested to testing that out. However, I think my project and the things that I've learned are still very applicable for a couple reasons. The primary of which is ChatGPT plugins is looking like, at least for now, only available on the chat.openai website. And while my implementation and a lot of things that I've done is a lot more open, and as long as you have the API, the ChatGPT API, you will be able to implement everything that I have done so far off that website. And today's video is going to be slightly more technical. I'm going to be going over some of the observations I made while building the app, including some of the prompt, how to do prompting well, and sort of the some of the things I learned to do or not to do. However, I will not be going over any code, because the actual code for a lot of these things to run is you can basically build it off of anything. I use Telegram. You can also make it in a Discord bot, or you can have a website to interact with. But I think the core piece of my software, or this method, is basically the prompts and the ability to get ChatGPT to do what you need to do. So a lot of this video is going to be on sort of prompt engineering and things like that, and I hope that you find this useful in case if you want to build something similar, or even if you just want to be a better prompt engineer. I think a lot of these things can help. So let's get started. Let me start by answering the question, why search? As I sort of alluded to in the first part of the intro, I said I was partially inspired by Bing Chat AI and the ability to search the web and give ChatGPT the ability to get the latest information. If you didn't know, ChatGPT has a knowledge cutoff of September-ish 2021, so it doesn't know anything past that date. And because of that, it can't really give very accurate results, particularly in terms of the latest results in things that have been made or discovered in the past 2 years. And I think that's very important, that ChatGPT to be able to give you accurate results that are accurate to today, not to 2021. And also another reason why I wanted to build search is because in my LLM video, I sort of said that I think the best use for LLMs is some summarization and query generation. So basically being able to summarize all the search results that it finds, and also being able to create a good search query. So that way you can sort of talk to ChatGPT and be like, hey, I want to look for this, this, and this. And ChatGPT will sort of figure out what to search for. It'll search for it, and then it will give you the results in a digestible manner. I think that's very appealing and one of the best uses of LLMs. And secondly, why product search? I decided to do product search because I wanted to start small. Searching the web is kind of hard, and also there really isn't any APIs out there to search the web. and Amazon provides a pretty good API for their product search, and I'll be using that, and it seems pretty simple, and also it's just a smaller scope to work with. So now let's jump into the actual program. So I started off with a pretty simple prompt, which is you are a helpful assistant that helps people with shopping find out what the person's looking for. If you need to search something, return product name, otherwise converse with the user to find out what they're looking for. Now here's one example of a conversation that I just did in the playground. Hi, I want to find some balloons. And ChatGPT asked what type of balloons you're looking for, and I said regular balloons are fine. And then it's like, what color balloons are you looking for? I said blue. And how many balloons are you looking for, and what size? I said 5 balloons, medium size. And then it gives, here's a suggestion for you: product party woo blue balloons. So as you can see, it does a decent job conversing with the user. And it also was able to sort of pick up a product, but it does that sort of in line. And we could see that the same, another conversation, I said I'm looking for tennis balls. It also basically gives the product in line with the conversation. And that's kind of not what I want, is because I want it to not only be able to find out what the product it's looking for, I also want it to get the latest information before answering the user. That way it will have the latest price information, it will have the latest models and things like that. So this is where I made the first observation: too many objectives at once. So a lot of times we throw everything and want ChatGPT to accomplish a lot of different objectives at once. And that may work sometimes. However, it probably doesn't yield the best results. So basically, I've learned that don't have too many objectives at once. If you want ChatGPT to do multiple things, tell it to do that one at a time. If you ask it to do it all at the same time, it may work. Sometimes it might just do one item. Sometimes it might do all of the items you ask it to do. And sometimes, as you can see, it did do everything that I asked it to do, kind of, but it sort of mixed things around. I wanted it to, if you need to search for something, return this. I wanted it to just return this, and then I'll send it back information, and then it'll send information back to the user. However, it sort of mixed those two objectives together. And finally, don't mix ChatGPT user interaction with ChatGPT app interaction. What I mean by that is basically, as you can see, I'm having ChatGPT do a conversation with the user, and that's what it does best, is being a chatbot. However, I also mixed in the app interaction that I want, which is getting the product name to search for. And as you can see, if you mix user interaction with app interaction, it sort of jumbles everything together, and the user might get a suboptimal experience because now they see this stuff and they're confused. So here are some examples of me fixing those errors. One is I switched the prompt up and basically split up the chatbot portion. As I said, don't mix the user with the chatbot. And you can sort of see that it now just picks out the products. And another issue that you see is there's the system message, and then there's the user and assistant. What happens is system message is sort of the overarching goal that ChatGPT has, that you sort of set the boundaries that it should operate in and what it needs to do. Whereas user is explicitly asking the assistant to do things, and the assistant replies. So you could see that if we mix ChatGPT user interaction with ChatGPT app interaction, and also sort of just do things in the system message, it will sort of think that the user's asking for the weather, and instead of returning false or returning no product or something, it actually tries to answer the user. So if you mix these two interactions together, sometimes it will just answer the user instead of answering your question of your app. So instead, you should split up these two tasks and basically use ChatGPT as your as a user. The app is the user, and then basically given an instruction to do. In this case, I say find out what the user is searching for, then only return product name. If they're not searching for anything, return only false. And as you can see, this is the conversation that the user said, and it's what is the weather today, and this time it returned false. So if you interact with ChatGPT on the app side directly, instead of going through the system messages and allowing the user to interact with ChatGPT, it will yield much better results. So basically, have the user talk to an instance of ChatGPT themselves, and you as the app talk to ChatGPT on your own instance and give it instructions properly. Now there's the observation 2, which is the knowledge, cutoff, and supplemental information. Now, we all know that, as I talked about in the beginning, ChatGPT has a knowledge cutoff of about September 2021 to like December 2021. So that's when it stopped training. And not only that, it also probably didn't train a lot on, it didn't get a lot of data on the recent events because there probably wasn't a lot of data generated. So because of this, any new information you want, you must pass to ChatGPT yourself. So basically, if you wanted to get information from 2022, 2023, the latest news today, all that type of stuff, you must pass to ChatGPT yourself. Now, sourcing the information is a whole nother question that I'm not covering because honestly, I haven't solved that problem either. And that could be solved by either sort of a search query, sort of using search APIs, or something like what I did here is I listed up latest, I had an object called latest info, and if it detected that the user typed in iPhone, it will send to ChatGPT the latest iPhone models are the iPhone 14, 14 Pro, 14 Pro Max. Same thing with iPad, same thing with the MacBook. And this is slightly tedious, but if you have, let's say, a tech-based audience, or if you know what your audience is, or if you're talking about products that you're selling yourself, you could sort of use this simple way of injecting information into ChatGPT. And here's an example of it not working. If you say I would like to look for iPhone 14 cases, the assistant says, I'm sorry, but the iPhone 14 has not been released yet. And however, instead, if you tell it the latest iPhone is iPhone 14, it will just do the right. It would just directly say iPhone 14 cases. And of course, if you also incorporated my observation 1, which is not mixing up ChatGPT user and ChatGPT app interactions, sometimes it may just work without actually giving that additional information. However, sometimes it will still mess up. So I was more cautious and always passed in that supplemental information to all calls, just in case if ChatGPT decides to freak out and say iPhone 14 doesn't exist. Now, moving on to, before we touch on observation 3, let's talk about a little bit about product advertising API. And the reason why I use this is because it is a free free API for everybody to use. And not only that, it gives you results in JSON, which is really easy to parse. It gives you information like the description, the ratings, the product price information and all of that. It's very helpful to have everything in one place. And there's also an easy Python library. And the reason why I'm talking about the API so much is because of observation 3, which is to leverage API and other built-in, it's not really built-in, but built-in knowledge to ChatGPT. ChatGPT is trained on the internet and it knows a lot about the APIs, especially the public-facing APIs, because a lot of these APIs either have documentation or code, for example, like this Python library that does the product advertising APIs. So it actually knows a lot about these things. And instead of you trying to construct API calls yourself with JSON, just have ChatGPT do it. And in case if it's a new API, or if it's an API that you wrote yourself, guide it to make the standardized structure or JSON. Basically tell it what you kind of want in the structure. You can tell it the keys that you want and the type of return values that you want. And then you could just parse this JSON. It is much easier to do this rather than parsing natural language. Have it give you structured language. Basically, don't try to tell it to, hey, return the product name, and then you have to parse and then put that product name into a search, PA API search query. Instead of doing that, just have it construct it itself. And here is an example prompt that I used. Basically, write a Amazon PA API search request in JSON, and it is a blue balloon. I would like to look for a blue balloon is the user's input, and you can see that it constructs this search request, and I gave it exactly what I want: the keywords, the sort by, the condition, the min reviews rating, the min price, and the max price. And because of this, it's able to construct the JSON really easily, and I can basically directly pass this into the PA API and get the required information. And let's say if I'm not passing into the PA API, I can still get parse this JSON in Python or JavaScript and then get the keys, so I can easily get the keyword, what it wants to sort by, and the condition, etc. So this is a good trick, is to leverage what ChatGPT knows about the internet and just tell it to construct these structured data instead of you trying to parse natural language and get the information out from there. Now, observation 4 is 4,000 tokens is, quote, too little for everything. And I know it may seem like a lot at first, and that's what I thought until I started passing in information. It seems like a lot. You may be using ChatGPT and you're like, hey, I never hit the token limit. You probably haven't, but 4,000 tokens is actually very little. And the reason I say that is because product description, the reviews, the pricing details, all of that really adds up and adds up quickly. And you may not think that's the case, but let's just say if I had one search request, it might use up, let's say, 2,000 tokens. If I had two search requests, that's already 4,000 tokens. And if you want to have information from multiple search requests, then you are basically running out of tokens, because ChatGPT can only parse 4,096 tokens at a time. Obviously, the GPT-4 models now have 8,000 and 32,000 token context size. However, I would advise against sort of using that because A, it costs a lot of money. It costs more money. It costs per token to run. And B, it's just better if you can give it the information that you need to give it. So this is my two recommendations to solve this problem. One is summarization. So use a non-GPT model, or you can even use GPT, summarize the information that you got, and pass that summary off to the model to interact with the user. And secondly is only pass what you need. If the user's asking for the product description, just pass the product description. You probably don't need the reviews. You probably don't need the pricing details. You probably won't need a lot of other stuff. So if you pass it the minimum required amount of information, then you will not be wasting tokens on things that ChatGPT does not need. And here's an example of the tokenizer. As you can see, there are 3,177 tokens in just one API call. And even if you shrink that down, this is 10 items, let's say 5 items, that would be 1,500 tokens. And if you think about having multiple, let's say 2 or 3 API calls, you're going to be hitting that 4,000 token limit really quickly. So instead of passing everything in, like the title, the image, the description, everything, pass in only the data that you need. Now, building upon this observation, I came up with this idea of the context, lifetime, and expiry. I'm going to move myself down here so you can see the top of the words. So the idea of context, lifetime, and expiry is keep things in memory, but give it a lifetime. Expire items that are specific quicker. If something's not being referenced, decrease its lifetime, and general knowledge can last longer. Now, what do I mean by this? Basically, if you're calling, let's say, an API request regarding, let's say, the iPhones, the latest iPhones. Now, the general knowledge is probably the 5 listing and their titles. Let's say the iPhone 14, the iPhone 14 Pro, and the iPhone SE. It lists those 3 and it keeps that in the general knowledge lifetime. And I give it like an arbitrary lifetime of 5 messages. So after 5 messages, it will forget. It will just remove that from the context. It'll stop sending that into ChatGPT, and it'll basically not remember that. Now, things that are specific, let's say the user says, hey, can you tell me the description or the specs for the iPhone 14 Pro? What it will do is it will get the information of the iPhone 14 Pro, which is a lot more. You know, it will have the product description, everything, which will take up a lot of tokens. However, we will make that expire quickly, let's say in 2 turns. So if the user stops asking about the iPhone 14 Pro, we can probably delete the information about the iPhone 14 Pro from the memory after relatively quickly. So that way you will have only the relevant information that you need passed to ChatGPT, and the things that you don't need, it will just sort of expire after a certain amount of chat results. And if you think about this, this kind of works intuitively as well. Is if you're having a conversation with someone and you guys stop talking about a certain topic, obviously you may return, but you probably don't need to you probably won't be talking about that topic in detail anymore if you guys haven't touched upon it after, let's say, 5 minutes. So the same thing, if ChatGPT senses that the user is moving away from a certain topic, it could sort of discard that information that it was holding in memory. It'll free up some context space and you'll have more tokens to pass in. And the last point I would like to make on this subject is recall APIs, well, re-call APIs, rather than keep it in memory. It is much cheaper to fetch information if you stop holding in memory, either by recalling the APIs or just holding it in a separate memory structure on your computer, instead of continuously passing that into ChatGPT and giving it memory. Because again, you're wasting your token context sizes and you're wasting money calling more tokens. Now, moving on to the sixth observation I made is Appify versus AllGPT. What I mean by Appify is instead of using GPT for everything, let's use GPT at what it's best at, which is chatting, summarization, query generation, and things like that. It's really good at that. But let's leave the rest of the stuff by appifying. So what I did kind of was I left a lot of the conversational handlers to Telegram, and I would send the information, the results of the product advertising API into Telegram. So I'd say send photos and things like that. If you allow the information that you're gathering to be sent alongside ChatGPT, that way you won't bother ChatGPT with things that you could probably do traditionally. So, for example, I would recommend for my search, I would like to put the search results separately from the chat information. So that way the user can get access to the links, the image, the description right away if they want to just read it on the web page, rather than having to go through ChatGPT every time. And now the downside of going through ChatGPT every time is A, it's going to cost you usage on your API, and B, a lot of times ChatGPT makes up information, especially if it's information that it hasn't touched on in a while. So it's better to have the actual real information from the API directly on the website, rather than having the user to say, hey, ChatGPT, give me the link. Especially with links, ChatGPT is very good at making things up. So the main idea from this observation is GPT is not always the best choice for everything. Don't have it handle everything. Handle the conversation, the summarization, the querying generation on its side, and offload everything else to apps and building an app around that. Now, observation 7 is overfitting prompts. Now, this is something that happened a lot with me. Overfitting in ML is basically when you start making your machine learning model learn a certain type of parameter too much, to which it will start losing precision and losing the ability to be accurate for other types of things. For example, if you're training on a cat and dog classifier, if you only train on cats that have big ears and a long tail, it might start to think that every single animal with big ears and a long tail is a cat. So that's what overfitting is. And specifically on overfitting prompts is being too specific in your prompts. If you're trying to craft every single situation into your prompt, if you find out something's not working, you sort of say, hey, for this case, do this. Hey, for this case, do that. It will start overfitting to the cases that you explicitly mention. And for the cases you don't mention, it will do worse. And of course, you also probably would be using things like not and always. And if you send this into ChatGPT, not all capitalized or always all capitalized, it will pay special attention to those tasks. And if you use not and always on things that you probably don't want to do always, then it might yield bad results for general prompts. While your specific prompt works, while your specific query works, a general query might not fit with your prompt. So don't craft prompts to address very specific situations. And remember observation 1. And observation 1, which is too many objectives at once. If you're crafting a prompt that does multiple things, if you're saying if this, do this, if this, do this, it will make ChatGPT worse at doing everything. So make sure, don't be too specific. Make sure it's a general prompt. And if you need to be specific, think about breaking up the ChatGPT calls. In my case, I broke up the responsibility of figuring out what to send to the PA API, what information to get from the product advertising API. I told a separate ChatGPT instance, hey, find out if we need the product reviews, the pricing, the description, and it handled that itself rather than telling the JSON creator, hey, figure out if we need the product description, the pricing, or whatever, and then pass that into the API. So you basically separate out those two objectives and don't overfit on a certain prompt. And my last observation, observation 8, is test, 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 and iterate. So basically, the idea is just test your prompts, not just with yourself, but with others. Testing often reveals holes in your prompts and things that don't work. Have real users do the tests so you'll get real world cases. So many times I've had people test my applications and they will come up with prompts that you've never thought of before. And this is even more true because right now we're doing prompts, queries and prompts. It's much more, the realm of possibility of a user input is basically infinite. Before, if you had like a programmatic app, users can only get to certain states and you know which states they will be in, and you can sort of test each state and make sure it's working. Because it's a natural language thing, it can be in so many different states and you cannot come up with all of these states. So it's very important to have real users to test this and collect this data and to be able to craft your prompts better to fit all types of prompts. And especially if you're having real users test, you'll know what they are looking for, and then you can sort of tailor your prompts and your objectives to that. However, with this test, 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 and iterating, make sure don't forget observation 7, that is overfitting. So if you're seeing myself, I've seen people's queries that didn't work, and I would keep changing my prompt so that their query works, and then all of a sudden my old queries stop working. So make sure don't iterate things and make the prompt too overfitted to the user testing, but also definitely have real world users to test things. All right, so those were the observations that I made while making this project. Let's talk about what's next. So this project is obviously not fully complete. In fact, at this moment, I would give it like a 7 out of 10 user experience. Most of the times it does good things, but some of the times it still does weird things and it doesn't give the most accurate information. And personally, I think I chose to use Telegram as the wrapper. It's not the best choice. So I do want to continue working on this project. So this is called SearchGPT. However, I'm also interested in doing something called that I'm calling BrowseGPT, which is basically linking ChatGPT to a browser and have it browse around the internet to get the latest information. So it's sort of an expansion on SearchGPT. There's also projects out there like AutoGPT, which is an agent that is able to search, come up with a plan and come up with searches and to execute on that plan. And that's a pretty interesting topic that I'm probably going to cover in a different video. There's also things like LongChain, which basically does sort of what I'm doing in search, and it comes up, it implements this thing called an internal dialogue, basically ChatGPT talking to itself to figure out what to do next. I think that's a very interesting idea to incorporate into search and browsing. But obviously my method without the internal dialogue does work pretty well, pretty much 90% of the time. And finally, I'm also interested in trying out ChatGPT plugins to see if it's a better experience than what I made, and also if it can work off of ChatGPT's website. All right, so in summary, here are the observations that I found. Basically, don't have too many objectives. The knowledge cutoff, make sure to use the knowledge of APIs and other built-in knowledge. 4,000 tokens is very little, so make sure to send in what is necessary. Have something with content lifetime and expiration. Appify things instead of doing everything through ChatGPT. Don't overfit your prompts. And finally, make sure to test your prompts with real world users. All right, so hopefully you've got a good sense of this sort of what I've been doing and some of the lessons I've learned. And I hope this is helpful in, even if just every day talking to ChatGPT, this might help you craft prompts that are better and help you achieve your objectives much easier. And especially if you're interested in making your own search engine, I think these lessons are very applicable as well. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like the video, make sure to press the like button, subscribe if you haven't already. Leave a comment if you have any suggestions or thoughts on any of these observations, or if there are other questions that you have on this search GPT that I've been building. But otherwise, I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.